You've spent most of your life believing that strength comes from holding on to people, holding on to plans, holding on to the idea that things will go your way if you just try hard enough. But the truth is, strength begins when you let go. When you stop trying to control everything that was never yours to control. When you stop attaching your peace to outcomes you can't predict. That's when the real power begins to rise. You see, attachment is the silent weight that keeps you crawling when you could be flying. It's the invisible chain that ties your emotions to things that are temporary, to approval, to success, to love, to recognition. And because everything in this world changes, everything you cling to will eventually cause you pain. Not because life is cruel, but because you refuse to accept that nothing is permanent. Alan Watts once said that the root of suffering is the refusal to accept impermanence. When you understand that, the entire structure of your life changes. You stop begging for stability in a world built on movement. You stop fighting what is. You start flowing with it. Detachment is not coldness. It's clarity. It's standing in the middle of chaos and knowing who you are without needing the world to agree. It's looking at your fears, your desires, your attachments, and seeing through them like fog. Because when you detach, you don't lose passion, you gain perspective. Most people live like prisoners of their emotions. They're constantly reacting, chasing pleasure, running from pain. They think freedom means doing whatever they feel, whenever they feel it. But that's not freedom. That's addiction disguised as choice. Real freedom is the ability to feel without being ruled by what you feel. It's the discipline to act with intention, not impulse. When you can do that, you own your life. Think about how much of your energy goes into chasing validation. The way you want people to see you, the way you need them to understand you. Every like, every compliment, every nod of approval, it becomes a drug. And the withdrawal from that drug feels like rejection. But here's the truth. The moment you stop needing others to approve of you, you become untouchable. No one can take power from a person who no longer seeks it from them. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop attaching your identity to them. You can love someone deeply and still not depend on them for your sense of self. That's not detachment, that's maturity. It's understanding that love should expand your freedom, not shrink it. It should strengthen your peace, not replace it. And it's not just relationships, it's everything. Your career, your goals, your possessions, your body, your reputation. Every one of those things can be taken away tomorrow. If your peace depends on them, you're building a house on sand. You'll spend your life anxious, defending illusions that were never meant to last. When you detach, you stop fearing loss, because you understand that what's real cannot be lost. Your integrity, your awareness, your inner stillness, those are permanent. Everything else is passing scenery. And when you truly grasp that, you start living with an edge that most people never find. You stop playing defense. You stop seeking control. You start moving through life like a calm storm, untouchable, grounded, aware. You don't become detached overnight. It's a process of burning away everything false. Every belief that told you your worth depended on something external. Every emotional hook that kept you chasing approval. Every fear that convinced you to settle for comfort instead of truth. One by one, you watch them dissolve, and what remains is peace. The kind of peace that can't be shaken by disappointment. The kind of peace that doesn't need the world to make sense. The kind of peace that feels like home, because it is. When you detach, you stop fighting life. You stop arguing with what is. You realize that pain isn't your enemy, resistance is. And the more you resist, the heavier it becomes. But the moment you surrender, the weight drops. You breathe again. You see again. You remember that life was never meant to be a cage. It was meant to be an experience. Alan Watts often spoke about the dance of life. He said that life isn't a problem to be solved. It's something to be experienced moment to moment. And if you're too attached to outcomes, you can't dance. You're too stiff, too serious, too afraid to lose balance. But the irony is, balance only comes when you stop trying to hold it. Let go when you'll find that life moves in rhythm with you. You'll stop chasing and start attracting. You'll stop reacting and start creating. You'll stop fearing and start being. When you detach, you become light. You become adaptable. You stop drowning in emotions because you finally learned how to swim through them. You stop mistaking temporary pain for permanent truth. You stop clinging to people who drain you because you realize you were never supposed to carry them. You start seeing clearly, not through the eyes of fear, but through awareness. And that awareness is freedom. It's what every philosopher, monk, and warrior has been searching for. Not pleasure, not comfort, but peace that cannot be shaken. You might ask, how do you actually detach? It starts with awareness. Start noticing what triggers your emotions. What makes you anxious? What makes you angry? What makes you desperate? Those moments reveal your attachments. And once you see them clearly, they lose power. Then comes acceptance. You accept that everything changes. People, plans, feelings, even you. And when you accept that, you stop fighting it. That's the essence of detachment. Acceptance without resistance. The more you practice, the lighter you become. You'll notice yourself becoming quieter inside. The noise of overthinking begins to fade. You'll stop rushing to fix everything. You'll learn to observe. You'll learn to respond only when needed. And that's when your strength becomes obvious. Not loud, but undeniable. Because the truth is, detachment makes you invincible. Not because the world stops hurting, but because you stop breaking. Nothing can shake a man who stands on nothing but his own awareness. You become unshakable because you no longer depend on the temporary. You no longer build your identity around things that can vanish. People will misunderstand you. They'll call you cold, distant, emotionless. But they don't understand. You feel everything. You've just mastered the art of not being ruled by it. You've learned that emotion is a signal, not a command. You no longer drown in the waves. You watch them rise and fall, knowing none of them define the ocean. Detachment doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It means you interact with life fully, but on your terms. You don't chase people, you attract them. You don't beg for peace, you create it. You don't demand control, you flow with what is. That's what makes you powerful. Not aggression, not dominance, but presence. You become grounded, still, focused. And in that stillness, you find something that most people spend their whole lives searching for: contentment. Not the shallow kind that comes from pleasure or praise, the deep kind that comes from knowing you're enough. Exactly as you are, the world will always try to pull you back, tempt you, provoke you, distract you. That's its nature. But when you're detached, you can walk through chaos with calm eyes. You can face rejection without bitterness. You can lose everything and still not lose yourself. Because detachment gives you the one thing that can't be taken: freedom. Freedom from needing to be right. Freedom from needing to be liked. Freedom from needing to have control over what isn't yours. And that freedom, that's the birth of real strength. Every warrior, every philosopher, every enlightened soul discovered this truth. The more you let go, the more you gain. Because detachment doesn't remove you from life. It returns you to it. It brings you back to the present moment, when the only place where you truly exist. When you stop clinging to the past and stop fearing the future, you realize there was never anything missing. You were just too busy chasing to see what was already here. You begin to live differently. You start speaking less and observing more. You stop reacting to insults because you see they don't belong to you. You stop overthinking because you understand that not every thought deserves attention. You stop explaining yourself because you realize truth doesn't need defending. Detachment gives you elegance in chaos. It gives you patience when others lose control. It gives you vision when others are blind with emotion. It gives you silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. That's invincibility. Not physical, but mental. Not arrogance, but understanding. It's not about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. Because once you do that, no one can touch you, and when you reach that point, life starts to look different. You begin to see the game for what it really is: a constant cycle of gain and loss, praise and blame, rise and fall. And instead of being tossed around by it, you start to move with it. Not out of weakness, but out of understanding. You realize that no amount of resistance will ever stop the tides from turning. Everything that comes must go. Everything that begins must end. That includes your emotions, your victories, your failures, your attachments, even your identity. It's all shifting, all temporary. You stop fearing change because you understand that change is the nature of everything. It's not your enemy, it's your teacher. Every ending is just a transition in disguise, a new path forming beneath your feet while the old one dissolves behind you. And once you stop fighting that truth, life becomes lighter. It stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like flow. But make no mistake, detachment isn't a passive act. It takes strength to let go. It takes awareness to step back and watch your mind wanting to cling. It takes courage to face the discomfort that comes when you release something you once depended on. You'll feel fear. You'll feel emptiness. You'll feel lost. But that's not weakness. That's the space where transformation begins. Because what's happening in those moments isn't death. It's rebirth. The parts of you that were built on fear start to crumble. The parts of you that were built on truth begin to rise. That's the cost of freedom, the death of illusions. And if you're brave enough to walk through that emptiness without trying to fill it, you'll find something extraordinary waiting on the other side. Peace. You'll start noticing how much of your suffering was self-inflicted. How much of your pain came not from what happened, but from your refusal to let it go. You'll see that life was never against you. It was just trying to teach you to stop holding on. Detachment doesn't numb you. It refines you. It gives you precision, emotional clarity. You start making choices from awareness, not desperation. You stop chasing outcomes that don't align with who you are. You begin to live from a deeper place, calm, centered, deliberate. And that changes everything. Your relationships, your work, your mindset, all of it evolves. Because when you no longer need to control or possess, you start to experience life as it is, not as you demand it to be. That's where authenticity is born. You stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop needing to be understood because you understand yourself. You start valuing silence over validation. You start preferring peace over attention. You start loving yourself not for what you achieve, but for what you are. Awareness, presence, being. Alan Watts said, "You can't be permanent by clinging to permanence." He meant that you can only find stability by letting go of the need for it. That sounds paradoxical, but that's the nature of truth. You only gain control by surrendering control. You only find strength when you stop trying to appear strong. You only discover peace when you stop demanding it. That's what detachment does. It strips you down until all that's left is what's real. And once you've seen what's real, nothing unreal can tempt you again. You become immune to manipulation, immune to chaos, immune to fear. Because the world can only control a man through what he's attached to. If you're attached to reputation, people can destroy you with rumors. If you're attached to wealth, the market can ruin you overnight. If you're attached to love, rejection will shatter you. If you're attached to comfort, life itself will terrify you. But if you detach, truly detach, the world loses its grip. You move with calm confidence because you have nothing to protect, nothing to prove, nothing to hide. That's what invincibility looks like. Not arrogance, not indifference. It's quiet, steady strength, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. It's the kind of power that comes from knowing that whatever happens, you'll still be you. Because you've built your peace on something unshakable. People think detachment means walking away from everything. But it's not about walking away, it's about walking free. You can stay where you are. You can love, work, build, dream, but now you do it from a place of wholeness, not need. From choice, not compulsion. That's what makes your energy different. When you're detached, you stop chasing. And when you stop chasing, things start coming to you naturally. Opportunities, relationships, clarity, they're drawn to stillness. Because nothing is more magnetic than a person who doesn't need to grasp. You start to realize how much time you've wasted trying to force what was never meant for you. You see that what's yours will flow to you. Not when you demand it, but when you align with it. Detachment makes room for that alignment. It clears the clutter of obsession, fear, and control. It opens the space for intuition to speak. And the moment you begin to trust that flow, you stop living in anxiety. You stop rushing, stop comparing, stop measuring your worth through external scales. You begin to trust your timing. You understand that everything unfolds exactly when it should, not sooner, not later. That's when patience stops being a chore and becomes your weapon. You wait with confidence. You move without fear. You no longer need to chase the future because you've already arrived in the present. That's what most people miss. Detachment isn't about escaping life. It's about entering it fully. When you stop clinging, you start experiencing. You start tasting life, not analyzing it. You start listening, not reacting. You stop living in your head and start living in reality. And reality, when seen clearly, is breathtaking. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. The light, the dark, the chaos, the calm, it's all part of the same dance. And you You're no longer a puppet on strings. You're the observer, the witness, the player who knows it's just a game. Once you see through the illusion of control, your entire mindset evolves. You stop seeing problems as punishments and start seeing them as lessons. You stop seeing endings as losses and start seeing them as new beginnings. You stop fearing death, not just physical death, but the death of old versions of yourself. Because every time you let go of something you've outgrown, you're reborn. And that's the beauty of detachment. It allows constant rebirth. You don't cling to an identity. You don't freeze yourself in time. You let yourself evolve moment by moment. You adapt without losing yourself. That's real power, yet the ability to bend without breaking, and that's what makes you invincible. Because when life can't break you, it can only shape you. Every challenge becomes a forge. Every setback becomes refinement. Every heartbreak becomes purification. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start saying, "What is this teaching me?" When you reach that mindset, you stop reacting to life emotionally and start responding consciously. You stop fighting the storm and start learning how to sail it. You stop demanding calm seas, and instead, you master the art of navigation. That's what detachment gives you: command without control, freedom without escape, strength without hardness. People around you will notice. They'll feel the difference in your presence. You'll speak less, but your words will carry weight. You'll do less, but everything you do will have impact. You won't need to dominate room. Your energy will do it for you. Because true power doesn't shout. It radiates, and it all begins the moment you let go. The moment you stop needing things to be a certain way. The moment you release the illusion that your happiness depends on anything outside of you. That's when you remember who you are. You are not the roles you play. You are not the things you own. You are not the opinions others hold of you. You are awareness, constant, silent, unchanging. Everything else is movement within that awareness. The more you remember that, the less the world can shake you. You stop seeing yourself as a person fighting through life and start realizing you are life, watching itself unfold. That's the essence of what Alan Watts tried to teach. You are not in the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself for a little while. And when you understand that, how could you ever be afraid to let go? The fear of loss dissolves when you realize you were never separate from anything in the first place. Everything you've ever loved, everything you've ever feared, it's all part of you. It always was. And when you detach, you're not losing connection. You're rediscovering unity. That's the final paradox of detachment. You only find oneness when you stop clinging to it. You only find love when you stop trying to own it. You only find yourself when you stop defining yourself. And when that realization hits, everything changes. You stop living for approval. You stop chasing comfort. You stop fearing endings because you finally understand. The only thing that can truly be lost is illusion. And when you let the illusions fall away, what's left isn't emptiness. It's freedom. It's strength. It's clarity. It's peace that doesn't depend on circumstance. That's invincibility, not the absence of pain, but the mastery of it. Not the absence of emotion, but the wisdom to let it pass through you. You stop running from life and start standing in it, fully, completely, unafraid. And once you stand there, grounded, aware, detached, you'll realize nothing outside of you ever had power in the first place. It was always you. Your attention, your focus, your energy, that's what gave things meaning. And now that you've reclaimed it, you're no longer at the mercy of the world. You move through it like fire through smoke, untouched, unstoppable, free, and from that place, everything changes. You stop chasing strength because you are strength. You stop searching for peace because you embody peace. You stop asking for clarity because you see clearly. The fog that once blinded you lifts, and what's left is pure awareness, steady, unshakable, rooted. You begin to understand why detachment feels like power, because it's freedom disguised as discipline. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things. But true discipline is the art of not being pulled by every emotion, every urge, every distraction. It's the ability to sit in discomfort and still move forward with purpose. It's mastery over impulse, and that mastery only comes when you detach. You stop living for the temporary high of success and start chasing the permanent fulfillment of growth. You stop running from failure and start using it as fuel. You stop trying to prove your worth and start living from it. That's the shift from the reactive man to the centered man. The man who doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to convince, doesn't need to rush. He moves quietly, deliberately, with the kind of power that can't be faked. That's what detachment gives you. Composure under chaos. You don't flinch when things fall apart because you no longer need them to hold you together. You don't panic when plans fail because you know how to adapt. You don't crumble under loss because you understand that nothing real can ever be lost. Every time you let go of something that doesn't serve your growth, you rise a little higher. Every time you walk away from what drains your energy, you reclaim your power. Every time you choose peace over reaction, you sharpen your edge. Because detachment isn't about escaping emotion. It's about mastering it. It's the art of staying centered in the storm. The strongest men aren't the ones who never fall apart. They're the ones who know how to rebuild, quietly, without noise, without complaint. They've learned that strength isn't loud. It's calm. It's patient. It's silent understanding. When you detach, you stop asking the world to make sense. You stop expecting fairness. You stop assuming that good things should always happen to good people. You accept life as it is, raw, unpredictable, imperfect. And in that acceptance, you find peace. Because peace doesn't come from having control. It comes from surrender. Not the kind of surrender that means giving up, but the kind that means letting life unfold without resistance. You do your part. You give your best. And then you let go of the rest. That's power, knowing when to act and when to release. Alan Watts once said that when you stop trying to hold the water, it flows through you naturally. The harder you grip, the more it escapes. Life works the same way. The tighter you hold on, the faster it slips away. But when you loosen your grip, when you trust the flow, everything begins to align. You begin to notice that peace was never outside of you. It was never hidden in achievements or possessions. It was always in the space between your thoughts, in the silence you've been avoiding. In the stillness you were too distracted to feel. When you detach, you rediscover that space. And that space becomes your strength. From there, everything you do carries weight. Your words have depth. Your actions have intention. Your presence commands attention. Not because you demand it, but because it's undeniable. People feel it when you walk into a room. That calm, grounded energy that doesn't need to prove anything. That's what true confidence feels like. You stop being addicted to noise, to endless scrolling, constant stimulation, emotional chaos. You start craving silence, clarity, stillness, because that's where real answers live. That's where real power regenerates. The more detached you become, the more alive you feel. Because now, everything that once drained you starts feeding you. Pain becomes wisdom. Failure becomes redirection. Solitude becomes sanctuary. You begin to see beauty in simplicity. You begin to appreciate presence more than possessions, and as that awareness deepens, so does your ability to lead yourself. You stop waiting for someone to save you, motivate you, or validate you. You become self-led. You take ownership of your thoughts, your choices, your direction. You stop being a victim of emotion and become the commander of your mind. That's the mark of a truly evolved man, the one who no longer runs from discomfort, but learns from it. You'll still feel emotion. You'll still feel pain. You'll still feel desire. But now you see them for what they are, waves. They rise, they fall, and they pass. And you? You stay still beneath them, unmoved, unbroken, unattached. That's the kind of presence that can walk through chaos untouched. It's not arrogance. It's awareness. It's not numbness. It's control. You've learned to see without reacting, to act without overthinking, to move without needing validation. That's what real mastery looks like, and it all begins the moment you stop clinging. The moment you stop begging life to go your way. The moment you trust that whatever leaves was never meant to stay, and whatever stays was never meant to harm. You stop fearing the fall because you've realized there's no ground, only depth. And you were never meant to hit the bottom, only to rise from it. That's the paradox of detachment. The less you hold on, the stronger your grip on life becomes. Because now you're not holding from fear, you're holding from freedom. You're not chasing from lack, you're moving from abundance. You're not existing in reaction, you're living in intention. That's why detached people are misunderstood. They're not heartless, they just understand hearts too well to let them dictate every move. They're not emotionless, they just refuse to be enslaved by emotion. They're not distant, they're selective. They've seen the cost of attachment, and they've chosen peace instead. And peace, once you taste it, becomes the only thing you'll ever chase again. Not money, not fame, not approval, not comfort, peace. Because once you have it, you realize that everything else is noise. When you detach, you don't become less human. You become fully human. You start living, not just surviving. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop existing in the chaos of what if and start thriving in the reality of what is. You become the eye of the storm. Everything moves around you, but you remain centered. And when you're centered, nothing can take that from you. Not rejection, not failure, not pain. Because those things no longer define you. You define them. That's when you become dangerous. Not to others, but to the parts of yourself that once kept you small. You become a threat to fear, to weakness, to dependency, to the noise that once owned you. Because now you've stepped into something timeless, awareness without attachment. And once you taste that, there's no going back. The world may still test you. People may still disappoint you. Life may still break your plans. But nothing will ever break you again. Because detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you unbreakable. It's the armor of peace, the calm in the middle of war, the silence that cuts through noise. And it's the mark of someone who has finally mastered the hardest lesson of all, that the only way to control life is to stop trying to control it, to let it unfold, to let go, and to trust completely. Because when you detach from everything, you don't lose your power. You become your power, and from that moment on, you stop chasing invincibility because you've already become it.